We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Thursday afternoon edition, Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. I am back from Provo, Utah. First of all, I want to say it again. Thank you to everybody in Provo for giving me just a great experience, from the BYU basketball staff to the fans to the Marriott Center. Didn't know I was attending a funeral for Kansas basketball, but it was, at the very least, probably the most entertaining funeral that I've ever been to. But thank you again for BYU fans for showing out. But we are back here in the home studio, and we got ourselves what I think is actually a loaded Thursday Aaron Torres pod, okay? So first of all, not sure how many of you have followed this. We've heard a lot about college football playoff expansion in the last week. Ross Dellinger's done some good reporting on that. Well, I bring it up because if you missed it, they're trying to expand the NCAA tournament as well. I'm telling you why this is wrong, why this is bad for college sports, why you need to fight it with every fiber in your being. This is not going to be good for the sports that we love. From there, we'll take a quick break. We'll talk a little bit about the Wednesday slate in college hoops. I thought maybe Mark Pope's finest moment as a Kentucky coach. I mean, listen, 3-1 since all those injuries. I think that's a great piece of news. And then the opposite is true as well. Auburn struggles with Arkansas. I already see nobody in the chat saying that, we all thought Cal was going to get that one win he always does at the end of the year. But Arkansas doesn't get the win. Auburn does. And then Bama getting smoked by Missouri. I think it says a lot about Missouri, but Bama as well. Finally, we will wrap the week. We will wrap by looking, at the weekend ahead. I'm already tripping over my words here. I got about 2 hours of sleep on Wednesday night after the game, or Tuesday night because of the game. But we'll look at what should be a really fun Saturday, Friday, and Sunday slate. We call it the weekend, where everybody comes from. But Friday night, we got Michigan State. Saturday, we got Bama, Kentucky, Houston, Iowa State, BYU, all of a sudden red hot against Arizona. And then Sunday, the big one at Madison Square Garden, UConn-St. John's. We are going to preview it all. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. And boy, oh boy, do we appreciate your support. We surpassed 50,000 subscribers last weekend. We're now well over 50,000, 300 and change. Listen, the goal now is 60, and then 70, and then 100,000, and then 1 million. We're going to take over college sports, but we cannot do it without your support. And we really do appreciate your support. As again, we passed 50,000 subscribers this past weekend. We'll have a special giveaway here in the coming days that I'll tell you about. So make sure you're subscribed. Also, make sure you do your boy a favor. Subscribe on podcast, Apple, Spotify. You want to leave a 5-star rating and review. By the way, even if you listen on YouTube, download the podcast, support the show. We appreciate you. You know what else we appreciate? We appreciate our friends. We appreciate our partners. We appreciate Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Okay, so listen, I've told you all about Collie Puffs now for months on end. But this is the health food alternative snack to the crap in your grocery aisle. You got to try it. You got to tell them Torres sent you, because it is phenomenal. Okay, so Collie Puffs, I've told you all about it. Family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, the owner, is actually a Rams season ticket holder. Joey, sorry for outing you there, buddy, but it's the truth, man. You love football. And Joey was sitting on his couch one day and basically said, look, here's the bottom line. I'm eating like a slob. I need something healthy for me. I need something healthy for my kids that's also delicious as well. And he created Collie Puffs, okay? Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease. But the best part is they are not only healthy, they taste freaking delicious as well. You can't find that in very many places. You can with this snack food, and you need to try out Collie Puffs for yourself. For more information, this is what I need you to do. Visit ColliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com. ColliePuffs.com. You can also find them on Amazon. That's right. I don't know what's in your cart. I don't want to know what's in your cart, you filthy, disgusting slob. That's your business. But what you need to do, get healthy, eat responsibly, throw some Collie Puffs in with whatever else is in that cart. Again, Amazon.com. Just search Collie Puffs. They're easy to find. You already got stuff in your cart. You're probably buying stuff on Amazon every day. Try Collie Puffs as well. With that said, it's a busy Thursday afternoon. I'm back from Provo. There is no more time to waste. So let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day. Listen, let me say this is that, it's kind of that quiet time of year in sports in general. NBA is off. We have this Nations Cup in hockey. I'm actually going to reference this in my spiel here about college football and college basketball. But it's a quiet time. And on last Saturday, I saw a story that I wanted to hit on, but we kind of got sidetracked by all the big games last weekend. I can't even remember who were all the big games, but I want to bring it back full circle because really in the last week or so, we have seen prominent discussion about both NCAA tournament expansion and college football playoff expansion. I think the college football playoff has been kind of more center stage. But again, if you paid attention on Saturday, we had that first bracket reveal. We had, everybody talking about who's going to be in this year's field. And we subtly heard both ESPN and CBS hint that we are going to get NCAA tournament expansion. They're trying to convince you it's the right move. It isn't. Trust me on this. So let's go ahead and dive into all of it. Okay. So first of all, I'm going to tell you why this is all terrible in a second. Let me just give you the quick, reader, like they used to call it the Reader's Digest, kind of the quick synopsis of what you've missed if you haven't been paying attention. Okay. So like I said, college football has kind of been the one that's been at the forefront. Ross Dellinger's done a great job reporting on this. And we've talked, listen, I'll tell you this, listen, I love Joel Klatt. Joel Klatt is the voice of college football on Fox. He's great at what he does. But when Joel Klatt, during this year's college football playoff, put out a hypothetical 14-team playoff bracket, that's when 14 teams was coming. And that has been the conversation basically since we got to 12. Remember, the current college football playoff system is locked in through 2025, 2026, meaning next year we're getting a 12-team playoff. But after that, it's totally up for grabs. The new contract's up. And basically, before this 12-team playoff even started, we've been hearing that it is probably eventually going to go to 14 teams. Well, I bring it up because Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports basically put out a bunch of different articles this week that there was a meeting both between the Big Ten and the SEC, and they are eventually going to present to all of the other conference commissioners and ADs and such. But that basically it is a matter of when, not if, and when is probably the 2026 season. So about 18 months from now, not even 18 months. Yeah, about 18 months from now. So not next college football season, but the following one, we're going to get playoff expansion. Now they're saying it could be 14, it could be 16. We will see. But essentially the three things you need to know are this. One, expansion is coming. It's either 14 or 16. Two, we are now going to have automatic bids into the college football playoff, not just for conference champions, but for just about everybody. Okay, it's like Oprah. You get a bid, you get a bid, you get a bid. We're looking at potentially 14 teams with 4 auto bids for the SEC, 4 auto bids for the Big Ten, 2 auto bids for the ACC, 2 auto bids for the Big Ten. That comes out to 10 bids right there. That comes out to 12 bids right there, plus 1 bid for the group of 5. So that's 13 total bids. Am I doing my math right here? 13 total bids, and then it would either be 1 at-large, 1 whatever. Okay, it'd either be 1 at-large or 3 at-larges if you're talking about a hypothetical 16-team playoff. Now, the way that they're selling you that this is the greatest thing ever, that a 16-team playoff, a 14-team playoff with 1 million auto bids is good, is because they're selling you, you're going to get the extra. SEC is eventually going to go to 9 games. God forbid they do what everybody else is. And that there is going to be an alliance between the SEC and the Big Ten, basically meaning they're going to play 1 game amongst each other once the season starts. So essentially, you're going to get minimum of 10 power conference games on your schedule. It all sounds well and good, but that's where we are with college football. We're going to get back to college football, why I think this is more harm than good in the bigger picture, but that's where we are in college football. What's much more interesting to me, especially around this time of year, they're trying really hard to convince you that NCAA tournament expansion is good, and all the powers that be are quietly lying in the weeds, planting seeds. They're not coming out and saying it, but they're hinting at it. And this was something that I actually went pretty hard at last weekend, okay? So last weekend, if you remember, we had that NCAA tournament mock bracket come out. They do this every year. They try to simulate the college football playoff every Tuesday night. Now, the college basketball screws it up. I've said it for 5-6 straight years now since they started doing this. College football tries to put out a bracket to kind of get you excited for March. The issue is they put it out on a Saturday morning, then a bunch of games get played, then the bracket gets screwed up. But this past Saturday was the afternoon that they put out this new bracket what the tournament would look like if the NCAA tournament started today. But in doing so, they kind of used that moment to soft launch, hey, tournament expansion would be great, people, wouldn't it? So first off, we had Seth Davis. Listen, I like Seth, but whatever. I like Seth. He's a good guy. Okay. Seth Davis does work for CBS, does the tournament selection committee. He has a website, one of these websites where, you got to pay for articles, whatever. Well, I bring it up because prior to going on the literal CBS mock selection show, he put out a tweet on Saturday morning that read the following. Producer Matt, you can pop that tweet. He said, it's been 40 years since the NCAA's tournament has expanded. 40 years, exclamation point. It's time to expand again. I explain why and whether or not it will happen in my column for Hoops HQ. Okay, first of all, it has not been 40 years since the tournament expanded. It expanded in 2011. It went from 65 to 68. By the way, earlier this century, it went from 64 to 65. So it's expanded twice since the turn of the century. But that was very clearly a hint that, oh, by the way, this is coming, especially when I'm going to be on TV talking about it in a couple hours from now. Producer Matt, you can save my tweet responding to that, but it was obviously pretty clear, like, oh, he wants you to think that this is a good idea. Well, here's the issue. Then it just obviously became media collusion because about an hour after he put out that tweet, we got College Game Day live from Tuscaloosa. This was last Saturday. Alabama hosting Auburn 1-2. And Reese Davis just so happened to throw to Pete Thamel, who just so happened to have this to say about the possibility, we're just dipping our toes in the water, about NCAA tournament expansion. Producer Matt, play this out.
You can't get enough of the tournament. 68 teams right now, and there's talk of adding them. There's some back and forth going on as Pete Thamel joined us. So Thamel, as the discussion and the argument goes about expanding the NCAA tournament, who's going to be the victor?
Well, Reese, obviously we have Selection Sunday a month away, and there's development behind the scenes about what this tournament could look like in 2026. NCAA President Charlie Baker is on the record saying there's been discussions about growing the tournament to either 72 or 76 teams. I had multiple high-ranking sources tell me this week that the more likely option, if the tournament were to expand, would be to 76. The NCAA has been in discussions with its media partners for a while on this now, and a decision on whether it does go to 76 would come in the next few months. The move to 76 would be historic. By adding 8 teams, it would be the biggest jump in what the tournament looks like since 1985. The logistics of what that could look like have not been set yet, but it's likely that an additional site like they have Dayton for the first 4 would be added. Think of a place outside of the Eastern time zone for that to happen. One likely wrinkle here is that if the men's tournament expands by 8 teams to 76, the women's tournament would expand as well. So there's a lot of variables here, Reese. Everybody would have to stay financially whole for this to happen. This has obviously been driven by the power conferences through expansion. You've heard Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti be bullish about this expansion. So ultimately, can the money come together and can the sides come together and figure out a way to cut to 76?
They're kind of booing this. Do you guys not want expansion? No expansion? They're happy with 68. They believe.
You heard it right there. Listen, the fans in Tuscaloosa, Alabama were booing tournament expansion, okay? And so let's talk about this because I believe this is going to hurt college sports more than help it. And I believe that those boos coming in Tuscaloosa were sign number one that this is not going to go well and it's only going to hurt the sports that we love, okay? So first off, I think the thing that stands out to me, nobody wants this, okay? Like there are changes in life that have to be made. And sometimes you got to do it, for whatever. But sometimes you got to do it because it's what everybody wants, right? I'm trying to think of a perfect example here. Nothing's immediately coming to mind. But there's a lot of stuff that has happened in sports that I might not personally like, but it's what everybody wants. Everybody wanted the transfer portal. Everybody wanted NIL. Everybody wanted players to get a cut of the money being made. But nobody wants this, okay? And first of all, from the college basketball side, I don't even think it's debatable. 68 is not only more than enough. We are literally in the middle of a season with probably the worst bubble that we have ever seen. As a matter of fact, producer Matt, you could go ahead and pop up my tweet responding to Seth Davis minutes ago from over the weekend. Because in it, when Seth Davis mentioned, it's time for expansion, here is what I tweeted. North Carolina, this at the time, they've since won 2 games. North Carolina is currently 14-11, 7-6 in the worst ACC of our lives, and even their own fans hate watching them play. They are currently in Joe Lunardi's first 4 out. So, yeah, it is definitely not time to expand. And so, first of all, that is the fan reaction. By the way, you know what North Carolina fans said when I tweeted that out? Yeah, Torres, we agree with you. We do not want expansion at all. We want nothing to do with expansion. We hate watching our team. This team stinks. Let's blow it up. And I think it's the same with college football. Listen, I know we could sit there and say, this team got left out, that team got left out. We all watched the playoff, okay? Those bottom 4 teams weren't even close to the top 4 teams that were in that field. With respect to Indiana, it was a great year. They weren't in the same stratosphere as Notre Dame. SMU wasn't in the same stratosphere as Penn State. We'll give Tennessee maybe a little bit of a pass because I don't think any of us realized how good Ohio State was in that moment. But it doesn't change the fact that we know that there is going to be a drop. There was already a drop-off between like team 6, 7, 8 and team 9, 10, 11, 12. Now we're going to add 2 more. Nobody was left out of this last playoff that feels like should have been in and feels like would have been competitive. By the way, I know Alabama fans spent all early December telling you, we're better than Indiana. We're better than this team. We're better than SMU. What ended up happening? They got destroyed by Michigan in a non-college football playoff bowl game. And I am here to promise you, Alabama fans do not feel like they got slighted. As a matter of fact, I think that they're happy they didn't go because not going to the playoff actually has forced Kalen DeBoer to make big changes. Ryan Grubb's in. What's the quarterback situation? Jalen Milroe isn't the answer. We have to solve this right now, Kalen DeBoer. So now we're going to add 2 more teams. By the way, the funny part about the college football playoff expansion as well is that, we are talking about adding teams in a college football playoff. Remember, we had to expand the playoff to 12. This was the whole argument. Well, we had to expand the playoff to 12. We have to include everybody. We have to include the group of 5. We have to include whoever, the second or third. We have to include the West Coast. It's like, no. The West Coast cares if the teams are good. USC fans aren't tuning in to root for Oregon. They want to know why USC isn't good. So it was always stupid logic as to why we had to expand in the first place. But the whole reason to expand was to include groups that are being left out. Now all we're going to do is add a bunch of mediocre and average 4th and 5th place teams from the SEC and the Big Ten. I'm sorry. The playoff was fine without Alabama. The playoff was fine without Illinois, which was the 5th best team in the Big Ten this year. Did you feel like you were missing anything because Illinois wasn't in the playoff this year? Stop, okay? And so I just bring it up because nobody wants this. But here, I think this to me, and I know I'm 17 minutes into the show, this is the most important point. This is the point that I think is worth noting. This is only going to hurt college sports in general, okay? And I think about it like this, okay? And I know we're talking about both college football and college basketball, but listen, as far as college basketball is concerned, listen, I love college basketball. If you're listening to this show, we both know that you love college basketball, you love college football as well, okay? And so you love college sports. But the thing about college basketball that is so obvious, 99% of the sports public does not care about the regular season. You care about your team. If you're an Auburn fan, if you're a Tennessee fan, you start tuning in November to your team. But on a national scale, people don't really care about college football, college basketball till probably right around this time, late February, early March, okay? And so while I love college basketball, there is no doubt that as the years go on, the regular season seems to matter less and interest seems to be lower. Well, I bring it up because let me put it this way. The more we expand the college football playoff, guess what? The less great the regular season is going to be. And that is the one thing. And by the way, producer Matt, this is probably the best spot that we're going to have for a reel here out of today's show. So just keep this one in the back of your head. But here's the thing with college football, okay? The more we expand this thing, guess what happens? The more that the regular season has been and will be decreased. And I know what people say, it was record-setting ratings here. It was record-setting ratings there. I get it. But the counter to that is that the regular season just didn't feel as important. I'm sorry, it just did not. And the truth of the matter is that you could tell by how people reacted to wins and losses, right? Alabama loses to Vandy. It's like, well, that's kind of weird, but, move on to the next one and try to win. Now, Alabama fans were maybe a little bit mad, but it wasn't until that 3rd or 4th loss where it was like, okay, now it's really time to have some serious conversations about this team. I go back, I vividly remember when Penn State lost to Ohio State. It was like in previous years, it was like, oh, James Franklin stinks, never going to get over the hump. He's terrible. He's this, he's that. Why do I bring it up? It is because now, guess what happens? Penn State loses to Ohio State. You just move on to the next game and you just don't lose another one and you're fine. So now we're going to add even more teams to the field. We're going to add even a 4th, 5th, 6th team from the SEC, a 4th, 5th, 6th team from the Big Ten. I'm here to tell you, like, the regular season is again, I mentioned it a minute ago. We were talking about a 9-3 Illinois team would have made a 14-team playoff. Is that a team that anybody felt like needed to be in the playoff? Alabama got destroyed 3 times, plus let's not forget that they lost to Vandy as well. Got destroyed and embarrassed by Oklahoma. Destroyed and embarrassed by Michigan. Destroyed is probably a little bit strong for Tennessee, but Tennessee was the better team, okay? And so when I look at Alabama, that was not a team that by the end of the year deserved a spot to play for a championship. Well, guess what? They're getting one going forward. And I think it is going to hurt the regular season. I think we're going to look back and we're going to say the golden age of college football was when regular season games mattered, because this is what stands out to me. I mentioned we're going to mention this Four Nations Cup from college, from the NHL tonight. The reason that the NHL is doing it is because no one cares about the regular season. And it's so funny to me, and I've said this for years. Outside of the NFL, there is no doubt that there is no bigger regular season in American sports than college football. And to take it a step further, every other sport is literally trying to figure out ways to play meaningful games that people care about during the regular season. The NBA is dead. It is flatlining. Nobody cares. Everything they're doing, ratings are going down significantly. Major League Baseball, they're playing games in London. They're playing games in Asia. They're playing games in cornfields in Iowa to get people invested and interested. The NHL has this Four Nations Cup, which seems cool. I don't really know. But everybody's trying to get people to watch, and college football had fixed the problem that everybody else has, and now they're trying to reverse engineer it so that people care more about games in January and February and whenever than they do about games in October and September, November. And so I just think we're going to get to a point very soon in college sports and college football specifically where the longer we go, the more we expand, the less the regular season matters. I'm sorry, but we shouldn't be talking about a 4-loss this team versus you have 12 chances to win games. You lost 4 of them. I'm sorry. I don't care about your team. And so you think about some of the teams that would have gotten left out. Texas A&M was 8-4 this year. Guess what? Their fans hated that team by the end of the year. LSU was 8-4. Their fans hate Brian Kelly. I'm just here to tell you the truth. Those are the teams that we're going to be putting in a playoff. It is a problem. And then finally, I'll just kind of wrap because this segment's going long. But I saw this earlier in the chat. UK Till I Die says it's all about the money. It's all for money purposes. You're exactly right. I think that's the part that frustrates everybody is like, okay, who really cares? It's not helping you. It's not helping the consumer. It's not making anything more interesting. All it's ultimately doing is making more money for a bunch of people in suits that don't actually care about what you have. By the way, I have somebody talking about Ohio State. Well, Ohio State seeding was this, and this. This new playoff format was fantastic, says D5 Terps. Shout out to the Terps fans in the chat. By the way, spent a weekend one time in College Park, Maryland. There's a reason John Rothstein calls it the spring break capital of the world or whatever. Fun little place to be. That's all I'll say. But what I will say is, listen, I'm not saying that we have to go back to 4. That ship has sailed. But what I am saying is 12 kind of feels like the limit, doesn't it? 12 kind of feels like where we're at. And oh, by the way, I think in some ways you could argue that Ohio State is the 8 seed winning the college football playoff helps. It shows if you could just get in, you get the opportunity. I think it kind of hurts the regular season as well because, listen, if Ohio State loses to Michigan next year, but they're 11-1, you just sit there and say, well, I mean, they just got to get hot in the playoffs. So anyway, I think this is all bad. I think it's especially bad in college football. I don't think we need it. It's very, very, very bad in college basketball. And I'm telling you, the powers that be are trying to ruin the sports that we love. You know what we do love? As I mentioned, the regular season in college hoops. We're one of the few shows that talk about it. But there was a lot that happened on Wednesday. Missouri smacked Alabama. Arkansas, this close to beating number 1 Auburn. And I thought it was maybe Mark Pope's. I think Mark Pope is in the middle of his best week as Kentucky's basketball coach, best 2-week stretch. We're going to explain that. We're going to preview a monster weekend slate. Quick break. Be right back.
What's up, everybody? It's AT, and listen, long day of podcasting. Sometimes don't always look the best. So look at this. It's a little bit not great, okay? Well, here is the great news. The great people at Filebox said, Torres, you're a professional. You just got 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. You need to look better. And so they sent me a couple awesome things. I want to pull them out for you right now. This is all from the winter collection, by the way. Spring collection is coming out. We got the vest, very, very, very nice. The sweater, very professional for when I go to professional events. We got these nice blue jeans. I think the question now everybody's asking is, Torres, how do you actually look when you put that stuff on? Let's find out. Well, what do you think? Sweater fits perfectly. Great for all occasions. When I go to games, when I go out to a dinner, warm weather, cool weather, it's perfect. Speaking of perfect, these jeans are phenomenal. Great for games, great for social events. Oh, by the way, a little bit stretchy if those New Year's resolutions aren't going on as planned. Really quickly, we got to try out. Let's try out the vest. It fits perfectly, not a surprise. So here's the deal. If you want to look as good as Torres, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to Filebox.com. That's F-I-O-B-O-C. Filebox.com. And here's the best part. For listeners to the Aaron Torres pod, you get 20% off with code Torres20 at checkout. We also put a referral link in all of our YouTube videos. Thank you to Filebox. By the way, make sure you're following them on social media at F-I-O-B-O-C. Thank you to Filebox. You want to look as good as Torres, check them out. Again, promo code Torres.
All right, everybody. All right, back. Good to be back. So hold on one second. I do one thing really quick, and then we are going to get to the Wednesday night college hoop slate. Just stay with me. All right, let's try that again, people. 3, 2, 1. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So that's what I want to do. I want to get to some Wednesday night college hoops. You know, listen, I don't know that there was like a lot of huge news, notes, standings, whatever. But let's go ahead and dive in. Auburn almost lost. Kentucky, I thought, looked really good against Vanderbilt. We're going to discuss those in a minute. Do you think the place to start, though? Beautiful Columbia, Missouri. Okay, so Alabama, of course, was ranked number 2 in the country last week. They hosted that number 1 matchup with Auburn. They lose to Auburn, but you say, okay, they're going to be fine. It's Alabama. They're the number 2 team in the country. They're a number 1 seed according to all the all the bracketology and this and that. Well, I bring it up because no one told Dennis Gates and the Missouri Tigers. That's right. Alabama walked into the gates of hell. How about that one for a pun? Alabama destroyed. Final score in this one, 110-98. And I'll say this, listen, I get a lot of stuff wrong, but I was on in Tuscaloosa radio on Wednesday afternoon with my buddy Ryan Fowler, and I just said, listen, the thing about Missouri is if you don't show up ready to play against them, they are going to punk you and embarrass you. That is exactly what happened as Missouri went up 12-0 in this game, ended up putting up, how about this? 110 points, as I said. They had 59 at the half. Bad loss for Alabama. And I'm starting to worry a little bit about Alabama. We're going to get to them in a minute. Before we do, though, we got to give credit where it's due. You know, Missouri, to me, listen, because the SEC is so, I think it's 2 reasons. The SEC is insanely good. And also Dennis Gates doesn't do like outside interviews. Like you won't hear him on the John Rothstein podcast. I know people that work for him. He doesn't want to do outside interviews. He wants 100% of his focus to be on his team. I've tried to get him on this podcast. It's been politely declined. Listen, everybody has to run their program that I believe is best, but because he does no outside interviews, you just don't really know much about him or this team. But they're one of the best stories in college basketball. Okay, remember, this is a team that last year finished 0-18 in SEC play. They did not win a single SEC game, yet with this win, Missouri is now on the season 20-6 overall, 9-4 in the toughest SEC ever. They are tied for 4th place in this league. Technically, they would be the 5 seed if the SEC tournament started today. But when you go from 0-18 to 9-4 in this league, it is one of the best stories in college basketball. And by the way, it's worth noting as well, there are 2 losses out of conference at Memphis, and they led at the half. Memphis is really good. And then also to Illinois on a neutral court in a game where they were largely competitive. So to me, one of the best stories in college basketball. I don't think you can probably give Dennis Gates SEC Coach of the Year because of what Bruce Pearl is doing and what Todd Golden is doing, but you never know with the way the schedule ends. But they are just an unbelievable story off of what they did last year. And I think the thing that stands out to me about them, they just play, one, they play a fun brand of basketball, but 2, they just play so tough, so aggressive. And basically, if you do not show up ready to play, again, they are going to embarrass you. What Missouri does, and we haven't just talked very much about them, what they do basically better than everybody else in college basketball, they force a ton of turnovers and they don't turn the ball over. Okay. Again, we've mentioned this a few times. We don't talk about turnover margin in basketball the way we do about football, but you look at this Alabama game, Alabama with 14 turnovers, only 8 for Missouri. And then Missouri finishes the game overall with 21 points off turnovers. And when you win by 12, that's the difference in the game. And so when I look at Missouri, listen, I know we do this time of year where we claim like 40 different teams are Final Four sleepers. But to me, Missouri has to be in the short conversation of a team that's probably going to be in that like 4 to 6 range. Like if Missouri, I'm just saying it, if Missouri is the 4 seed in the same bracket as Duke, you mean to tell me that they can't beat Duke with the way they play defense, with the way they force turnovers? Now, Duke's bigger, Duke's more athletic in the front court. But Missouri's the kind of team that I think is just going to be kind of under the radar. Again, I just don't feel like they're getting nearly enough credit that they deserve. And I think they're one of those teams that is going to be under the radar. We're not going to be talking about them. They're going to get the right matchup, and they are going to have a chance to make a run in March. Because, again, you force a lot of turnovers. You can score in transition, as I said. They're very guard-centric. They have a bunch of veteran guards, and they shoot the 3 ball really well at 37%. And so I want to give them credit. And to me, they are the kind of team that, again, I know I hate doing this at this time of year because everybody does it, but it's like, that's not the team that you want to see in your bracket. And I know we say that about like 50 different teams at this time. Missouri really is that team. And you look at what they've done. I think this is the most impressive stat. I tweeted it out. I forgot to send producer Matt this, so blame Torres, slap on the wrist. But we talked about the bracket reveal over the weekend, okay? We know that the 4 number 1 seeds were Auburn, Alabama, Duke, and Florida. Florida and Alabama right now are a combined 44-8. They have a combined 6 losses in the SEC. 2 of those 4 losses are to Missouri. Missouri is 2-0. So if you can beat Alabama the way you beat them up on Wednesday night, and oh, by the way, they won at Florida. Don't forget that. You can play with just about anybody. So I want to give them credit. Like I said, great guards. Tamar Bates has really developed. He was a transfer from Indiana. But the guards have really developed. They force a lot of turnovers. They shoot threes. Again, I know it's cliche. That's not a team that I would want to see in my bracket. Really quickly, I think it is probably worth at least acknowledging. I'm starting to worry a little bit about Alabama, okay? And it's not like one of those cliche, oh, they've lost 2 in a row. What does it mean? But there are 2 things that are starting to concern me about Alabama. And again, I understand that they're number 2, number 3 in the country, whatever they are. And I understand also that on top of that, they are the type of team that was playing great basketball, has a great overall record, and they did just lose to a top 15 team. And so, I don't want Missouri fans to be like, oh, Torres, you can't even give us credit. Well, I just gave you credit, okay? So I'm not saying that this was a bad loss for Alabama. But there are 2 things that are starting to emerge for me with Alabama. One, Alabama's defense still is just not good enough. Now, I know they were able to overcome it in the NCAA tournament last year, make a Final Four, but this is the second year in a row where Nate Oates just cannot get these guys going in the right direction. 110 allowed to Alabama on Wednesday night. I'm getting all my days confused here because I was traveling. Gave up 94 to Auburn at home. And it's not like they haven't given up plenty of points in other games as well. Gave up, you talk about going back to the game at Rupp. They gave up 97 at Rupp. They gave up 87 to Vanderbilt a few weeks ago, 81 to Arkansas. And so I understand that, and by the way, I know all the analytics nerds would be like, oh, well, they played faster and have more possessions. That's why they give up more points. Okay, I get it. They're still not good enough defensively. The other thing with Alabama, it's really 2 things in one. I don't really know who they are. And it's weird, right? And again, am I overreacting because Alabama lost 2 games in a row? Maybe. They were playing really well coming in. They have a bunch of great wins. They're a team that has obviously beating Houston in the out-of-conference, beating a very good Creighton team in the out-of-conference, pretty much ran through the SEC up until this point, beat Kentucky, beat Mississippi State on the road, beat Texas on the road, on and on. But one, I do think their record's a little bit inflated because they played the easiest part of their schedule, which is crazy to say, but they still have Auburn on the road. They still have Florida. They still have their only game with Tennessee. So they still have some tough games left on the schedule, but they're beyond the defense. Two things stand out. One, I don't really know who they are, right? Like, shoot a lot of threes, but they don't shoot well. Mark Sears is good. Sometimes he isn't. Sometimes he plays well, whatever. But then here's the other thing, and I was talking to Ryan Fowler about this. Like, who is the leader on this team, right? Like we know at Auburn, everything goes through Janai Broome and Chad Baker-Mazara. We know at Kentucky, it's about Lamont Butler when he's healthy. We know at Tennessee, it's a guy Ziegler. I don't know who that is at Alabama. I love Mark Sears, but, he was sulking on the sidelines a few weeks ago when he got benched. Grant Nelson's kind of a transfer, and he plays well sometimes, and he doesn't play well. I don't know who they are or what they're about. So I guess the point that I'm trying to make is, one, I do think there are some more losses coming. And two, I would also say that I think that it's hard to say. They deserve the ranking that they have. It's not that they are overrated, but it is like, are they really as good as we thought they were? I don't know. We're going to find out in the coming weeks. Again, that Alabama schedule is thankless. And it continues this weekend against Kentucky. We're going to preview the weekend here in just a minute, but it doesn't get any easier with Kentucky coming to town. Speaking of not getting any easier, shows you how tough the SEC is. Auburn coming off the win at number 2 Alabama. They play the little old Arkansas Razorbacks. No big deal, right? You come in, no problem. Well, they won just barely. Final score 67-60, okay? And really, to me, listen, survive and advance. The thing with Auburn that's so impressive, to me, I would argue they've really only played 2 bad games all year. The one where they lost to Florida, and I would argue they were actually kind of terrible in this game. And we'll talk about the Arkansas side in a minute. But to me, that's actually a testament to Auburn. You look at all the big games that they've played, that they've basically had essentially 2 no-shows the entire year. That's a pretty good thing considering the slate that they have had. And the most important thing is they get the win in this game. From the Arkansas side of things, listen, I've even seen the Arkansas beat writers, my buddy Curtis Wilkerson, my buddy John Neighbor say it. Like, the vibes were really good 2-3 weeks ago. You knew this was the toughest part of the schedule. 3 of the last 4, Alabama at home, at A&M, at Auburn. Well, now the schedule lightens up, and you have to win the games going forward. Manageable schedule as much as it can be. Now, you have Missouri this weekend. That's going to be a pretty tough one. But you have the return game against Texas, who you already beat. You have South Carolina. You have Vandy. You have Mississippi State to close the year. I know 2 of those 3 are on the road. You got to start winning some games. Arkansas, as we speak right now, is 15-11. Again, because the SEC is so tough, I don't think that they're like, listen, losing to the number 1 team in the country is not a bad loss, okay, on the road. But now you got through that super tough part. You couldn't get that super signature win outside of the Kentucky game. You had chances. You almost beat Alabama. You almost won at Texas A&M. You almost won at Auburn. But now you got to start closing out, start finishing games. Frustrating game if you're an Arkansas fan. Big Z has been the best player on your roster for weeks at a time, basically since January became February. He was great against Kentucky. He was great against Texas. Really great in all these games. Great in the most recent win. I'm trying to even remember who the most recent win was against. I can't remember. But he was not very good in this game. I mean, this is kind of a shocking stat line. 0 points on 0 of 9 from the field, 0 of 10 from the field, 0 of 9 from 3, not ideal. And then to me, the other thing that stood out, you miss a ton of 3-pointers, 3 of 19, 7 of 14 from the free throw line. And it just felt like there were way too many turnovers. The stat sheet tells you it was only 11. It feels like they kept turning the ball over at the worst possible time. So, listen, you're never going to criticize a team for losing the number 1 team in the country, but that game was there for the taking. I think if there is a little bit of a positive for Arkansas, and I know it's not something that Arkansas fans are going to celebrate on a day like today, but if there is a positive, it's that and we talked about this after the Georgia win, which was weeks ago. You've kind of figured out who you are. You're a team that's not going to be able to outscore people. You're not going to be able to put up 90 on most nights. You have to play defense. You have to be tough, and you have to rebound. The good thing is if you can execute that game plan and be within a couple buckets of beating Auburn, a defensive rebound that goes out of bounds, of potentially, winning that game, you could beat anybody. And you played Alabama tough and you played Texas A&M tough, but you have to close out these games. I will tell you, if I was an Arkansas fan, I'd worry about this Missouri game at home this week. And I'm telling you, Missouri is the real freaking deal. And Missouri, like I said, they will come out and embarrass you if you don't show up ready to play. We'll see if Arkansas can get back on track. Missouri this weekend, Texas at home midweek is an absolute must-win game next week. And then, as I said, you close with at South Carolina, at Vandy, at Mississippi State. Finally, do you want to talk about one more game from Wednesday night? This is a game that I think is actually, I think this game is a little bit bigger and more important in the grand scheme of things than many people realize. That is the Vanderbilt-Kentucky game. And listen, I know that this wasn't the sexiest game on the slate. And I know that it was on SEC Network, and it's not a game that we're going to overreact to, and we're going to pretend that Kentucky's the greatest team in the world or that Vanderbilt's the most terrible team in the world. But this was, in my opinion, a kind of important win. Kentucky gets the victory 82-61 over a pretty good Vanderbilt team. Remember, Vanderbilt beat Kentucky earlier in the year. That's one. Then, oh, by the way, beat Tennessee earlier in the year. That's two. And then, oh, by the way, almost swept Tennessee this past weekend in Knoxville before Tennessee made a late rally. So you're talking about a Vanderbilt team that is going to be in the NCAA tournament at 17-9 overall, 5-8 in the SEC, and you just beat them by 21 in your place. Now, I know what people say, Torres, we are never going to celebrate a Kentucky win over Vandy. How dare you insinuate? Well, listen, context matters here, just like context matters anywhere in sports and in life and in the world of college basketball. And what is the context right now? The context is Kentucky, for a frontline team that believes it can get to a Final Four, is as banged up as anybody in the sport. They don't have Lamont Butler, their starting point guard and their most important player. They don't have Kirk Risa, their backup point guard, and I wouldn't say their second most important player, but you need a point guard. And they don't have Jackson Robinson, who is an elite shooter, an elite scorer, one of the best players on that team, who also is basically the third string point guard. Okay, so you're playing without 3 point guards, and you are continuing to win games in the toughest league in college basketball. And so I tweeted this out on, Wednesday night. I said, I think, and this is going to sound crazy, because Kentucky in the out of conference beat Duke on a neutral. Duke's going to be a number 1 seed. They beat Gonzaga on a neutral. Gonzaga's not great, but that's still a good win. They beat Florida to start the regular season. They beat Mississippi State on the road. But what I would say and what I would argue is that the last 2 weeks have been Mark Pope's best coaching job as the Kentucky Wildcats head coach. And it sounds crazy and it sounds whatever. To me, it's not even a debate, though, okay? Because the bottom line is, listen, the Duke win is incredible. The Florida win is incredible. That goes without saying. We know that. But you were at full strength in those games. You were at your best in those games. Not only is it Kentucky not at its best in these last couple games, they're not even close to the best version of themselves. And just talk it out. Pretend it's not Kentucky. Pretend it's not the biggest brand in college basketball, the one that we overanalyze everything. Pick any team in America. You're without your starting point guard. You're without your backup point guard. You're without your third string point guard, who is also a double-figure scorer. You're not supposed to win games in the toughest conference of college basketball. Well, look at Kentucky's last 4 games. You beat without your starting point guard, without everybody. You beat South Carolina. Okay, who really cares? South Carolina is the worst team in the league. What does it really matter? Then you beat Tennessee at home for the clean sweep of Tennessee, one of your big rivals. By the way, kind of worth noting, 5-star Nate Ament was there. Kind of a big deal because, again, you're not only winning, you're winning in front of one of the best recruits in America and the best uncommitted player in America that you're trying to convince to come to Kentucky. So that kind of worked out well as well. You beat South Carolina. You beat Tennessee. The Texas game we talked about on Saturday's show, Sunday's show, is the fact that game against Texas, you were in control of. You were in control against Texas, and you end up falling apart. You're up 5 with, 3.5 minutes to go? And then you beat Vandy. So without 3 key players, including essentially your 3 top point guards, you are now on the season 3-1 in a blown lead from being 4-0. And so to me, it's the best. Like, I was watching that game against Vandy, and it's like, it's not that I don't know who the players are on the court, But like these were guys that you didn't even think were even going to play this year that are playing meaningful minutes. Travis Perry as a kid, listen, great story from the state of Kentucky, leading scorer, whatever. But he was not a guy that anybody thought that you would have to rely on at all this season. Well, guess what ends up happening? Bunch of injuries. This kid has to play as a true freshman, is starting as a true freshman, and is giving you good minutes. 6 points, 2 assists, 1 steal in this game. Trent Noah, we've talked about him a ton. Did not particularly play well on Wednesday night against Vandy, but was great against Texas, was great against Tennessee. That's not a guy that you thought was going to have to play meaningful. Like, I was watching this game against Vandy, and I'm like, these are guys that should not be on an SEC court right now, not because they're not good enough or they might not eventually be good enough, but because these were guys that you did not expect to have to play all season long. By the way, Ansley Almanor was at Fairleigh Dickinson last year, was a guy that when he entered the portal, as we've discussed, the biggest offer that he had when he was in the portal was Siena. And Kentucky offered him as the 8th, 9th man, and he is stepping up, and he is playing big minutes, and he played well on Tuesday night or Wednesday night with 9 points. By the way, Colin Chandler was literally on a Mormon mission at this time last year. Could not pick up a basketball. Did not play basketball for 2 years. He's playing meaningful minutes in SEC games. Last night or Wednesday night, he played 15 minutes off the bench, had 7.6 rebounds. By the way, did say in the preseason, I think that kid's a future NBA player. But I just bring it up to say that there is no business for this team to play this well over the course of this stretch of the schedule when you are deep in SEC play, when everybody knows your strengths, everybody knows your weaknesses, you're playing NCAA tournament caliber teams every night, and you have proceeded to go 3-1 over the last 4 games, and the only loss that you had is a loss to Texas in which you were in control until the final couple minutes. And so to me, listen, this isn't going to win. Nobody's building a statue for Mark Pope off of this. Nobody is, putting his name up in the rafters next to Adolph Rupp and whatever. But I think this is his best coaching job because he has a bunch of guys that we did not think were going to be playing at all this year, let alone the roles that they are playing. And they are not only surviving, they are winning SEC games. And I think it has to give you enthusiasm for the back half of this schedule. Listen, I don't know who's going to be available Saturday against Alabama. I know Lamont Butler's getting closer. And I know that we got Auburn still on the schedule coming up if you're a Kentucky fan and at Missouri. But again, what have we said on this show? The goal isn't to be great every night now in mid to late February. The goal is to get to March and be healthy. You already have a tournament resume. We've talked about it. Sweep at Tennessee, win against Duke on a neutral, win against Florida at home, win at Mississippi State, win against Gonzaga on a neutral. They have an NCAA tournament resume right now. The goal is to just get healthy for March. And oh, by the way, you're picking up great wins along the way. Again, Vanderbilt's not going to define a season, but it is a great win. I give Mark Pope credit. He deserves credit for having this team ready to go. And I think, again, this has been some of his best coaching over the course of the season. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. Come back. When we come back, we will preview a busy weekend in college hoops starting Friday night with Michigan State, ending Sunday with UConn at St. John's. In between, Kentucky, Bama, BYU-Arizona, and all of a sudden intriguing game, Iowa State, Houston. We'll take a quick break, preview the weekend. Be right back.
What's up, everybody? It's AT, and listen, long day of podcasting, sometimes don't always look the best. So look at this. It's a little bit not great, okay? Well, here is the great news. The great people at Firebox said, Torres, you're a professional. You just got 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. You need to look better. And so they sent me a couple awesome things. I want to pull them out for you right now. This is all from the winter collection, by the way. Spring collection is coming out. We got the vest, very, very, very nice. The sweater, very professional for when I go to professional events. We got these nice blue jeans. I think the question now everybody's asking is, Torres, how do you actually look when you put that stuff on? Let's find out. Well, what do you think? Sweater fits perfectly. Great for all occasions. When I go to games, when I go out to a dinner, warm weather, cool weather, it's perfect. Speaking of perfect, these jeans are phenomenal. Great for games, great for social events. Oh, by the way, a little bit stretchy if those New Year's resolutions aren't going on as planned. Really quickly, we got to try out. Let's try out the vest. It fits perfectly, not a surprise. So here's the deal. If you want to look as good as Torres, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to Fioboc.com. That's Fioboc. Fioboc.com. And here's the best part. For listeners to the Aaron Torres pod, you get 20% off with code Torres20 at checkout. We also put a referral link in all of our YouTube videos. Thank you to Fioboc. By the way, make sure you're following them on social media at FIOBOC. Thank you to Filebot. You want to look as good as Torres, check them out. Again, promo code Torres.
All right, everybody. All right, back. Good to be back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. We actually got a couple nice comments in the chat. We'll get to them to wrap the show. Do want to very quickly, though. Listen, I want to preview what should be an awesome weekend in college hoops. Listen, we've talked about it all the time, but, football is obviously done. The NBA is basically dead, if we're being perfectly honest. I guess the regular season started back up. Apparently, hockey is taking center stage now. I don't really know. What I do know is this is the first weekend where it's like, oh, the TV networks all realize we got inventory to fill. Let's put good games on Friday, although credit to Fox, they have been doing that. And then we actually have some intriguing games on Sunday. So let's go ahead and quickly look at the big weekend ahead, because Friday to Sunday, we got plenty of college hoops. Let's start big game Friday. I'll say this, man. First of all, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, right? And so I'll give you a quick example. Just saw during the break that Victor Wembanyama's out for the year. Like, the NBA is dead, but sometimes you just feel bad for Adam Silver. It's like there's stuff that's out of, Wembanyama's just out for the year. Like, people were excited about him, whatever. I bring it up because the opposite is true as well. Sometimes you could put a game on a schedule and you have no idea what's going to happen. Well, Fox putting Michigan State on a Friday night because they're two big brands, a great rivalry. What I don't think they anticipated at the time was that these are the top two teams in the Big Ten. First place is on the line in this game. First off, let me say this. Michigan, I think, is actually a really cool story. Dusty May comes from Florida Atlantic. And I'll be honest, everybody wants to rave about him. Oh, he's the greatest thing ever, and the offense is amazing, and this, that. No, that guy can coach ball, okay? Michigan right now is on a 6-game winning streak. They're 20-5 overall. And they're coming off just a really impressive stretch. Beat Purdue a few days ago, about, whatever it was, 10 days or so ago. That was when we complained about the Peacock schedule, but that's another conversation for another day. And then that Ohio State game got feisty last Sunday. You saw about as much emotion from Dusty May as you could. Basically came to the locker room and said, they're trying to bully us. We don't get bullied. I'm Dusty freaking May, okay? And that's a little bit of paraphrasing, but you get the point. But they beat Ohio State. Now we're setting up 1 versus 2 in the Big Ten. Michigan State, to me, good story. I think they're a little bit more athletic than maybe people realize. Started out the year so well. Obviously, what was it, about 9-0 in Big Ten play? They dropped 3 of 4, but have quietly won 2 straight, winning at Illinois, and then they beat Purdue the other day at home. To me, I'll just be real. This is a game that, to me, just favors Michigan. Listen, Tom Izzo, love him, been around forever. He's an icon. Nobody's forcing him out the door. But at the same time, Michigan State is still one of those old school teams. They just don't even shoot a lot of threes. They make a fair amount of them. On the season, let's see this. 633 attempts for Michigan, They shoot the 3 ball and they shoot it well. Michigan State, on the other hand, I think I said Michigan State doesn't shoot well, whatever. The point I'm trying to make is that Michigan State is not shooting the 3. Anyway, my stat sheet is getting screwed up here. Bottom line is Michigan shoots the 3 ball well and shoots a lot of them. Michigan State does not shoot the 3 ball well and does not shoot very many of them. So at a certain point, to quote my old buddy JJ Redick, it's a simple math equation, F-head. If one team's shooting the 3 ball and shooting it well, one team is not shooting the 3 ball as much and not shooting it well, it leads to more points on the other side. So that is a long-winded way of me saying I like Michigan to win this game. By the way, the return game, final game of the regular season at Michigan State, those 2 games could decide the Big Ten title. But again, credit to Fox. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, because we got a first-place matchup. If Michigan wins, they'll have a 2-game lead in the Big Ten. And if they lose, we will have a tie atop the league. Let's go to Saturday. Going to kind of go out of order here. Intriguing matchup between 2 teams that are just, we just talked about them. Alabama hosting Kentucky. These 2 teams played one of the all-time games earlier this season at Rupp Arena. This one is at Coleman Coliseum. Kentucky traveling to Alabama, 6 p.m. Eastern start. And it'll be interesting to break this down because I just said, Alabama's heading in the wrong direction. Don't love what they're doing. Kentucky's playing above their heads. Credit to Mark Pope, this, that, the other thing. Well, I just bring it up because as I look at this game, I find it very hard to believe that Kentucky's going to win. Not because Mark Pope's not awesome, not because he's not incredible, but there's 2 reasons why. One, Alabama's just a bunch of grown men. Big, physical, tough team. And when Kentucky is going to be forced to play Trent Noah, Travis Perry, Colin Chandler, some guys that either haven't played a lot, haven't been in the weight room. Again, Colin Chandler was on a Mormon mission. You think he's, benching 225 every day on a Mormon mission? No, it's going to take time for him to get back. And so I just think this is a tough spot for them against a big and physical Alabama team. Alabama's also coming off a 2-game losing streak. They're back at home. They need this win. And listen, it's going to be a great crowd, right? Every time Kentucky comes to town, the crowd is loud and energetic and excited. I think Mark Pope's doing his best coaching as the Kentucky basketball coach. I think this is a tough spot for him. I do think Alabama gets the win. Let's keep it going. Saturday afternoon. This is an earlier game. Houston hosting Iowa State. Okay. Really, I'm excited about this game. Now, I know these two teams play a ton of defense, and so it's really hard to, this isn't going to be it's not going to be like Kentucky, Florida, or Florida, Alabama, or Kentucky, Alabama. Let me just put it to you that way. Houston is obviously the best defensive team in college basketball. Iowa State is much improved over the last couple weeks. Currently, the team that is leading the Big 12 in Houston against Iowa State, who is tied for third with Texas Tech. First of all, Iowa State, I think we got to give them a little bit of credit. They had some injuries. Remember, by the way, it's worth noting with Iowa State. Remember, they started the year 18-1. Their only loss was to Auburn in a game which they led by 20 points before they blew a second half lead, okay? So they were playing really well. Then they deal with some injuries. We've discussed it. Our boy there, Milan Momcilovic, I always screw up his name, but he goes down with an injury. They struggle during a tough part of their schedule. Well, to their credit, schedule softens a little bit. They get healthy, and they have won 4 games coming into this. And by the way, even the losses that Iowa State had, it was Arizona, at Arizona, when Caleb Love hits a 3-pointer at the buzzer to force overtime. That's not a bad loss. And so with Iowa State, Kansas State was playing well at times. So I could go on and on. But Iowa State is playing much better. Houston, to me, though, is just on another level, man. I mean, one, they're just destroying everybody. They're 22-4, 14-1 in the Big 12. We talked about it last week and last year. The fact that this team just walked in the Big 12 and just started kicking everybody's you-know-what, we need to – Kelvin Sampson is so freaking good, okay? And so you have a situation where they're at home. College game day is going to be there. I just don't see the scenario where they lose this game. They're so elite defensively. They're so tough. And I think the thing that stands out, too, you go back to the Arizona game last week for Houston. They got dudes that can make plays in the clutch with the ball in their hands. And so LJ Cryer was incredible in that game. The guards were incredible with the defense. These are two of the more physical, tough teams in college basketball. These are two teams that I absolutely think can get to a Final Four. Heck, I did my how many teams can win a championship last year, and I had both of these teams included as well. So I think Houston wins. I think it's ugly. If you're expecting, 88, 84, probably not the game for you, but I still think it'll be a fun game. Really quickly, which one was next on the docket, producer Matt? Was it Texas A&M hosting Tennessee? I'm going just SEC, Big Ten, SEC, Big Ten. I'm going to be super quick on this. If you think Houston and Iowa State's going to be a tough watch, Texas A&M and Tennessee is going to be scratch your eyeballs out, get this game off my TV level of whatever. Now, they're both good teams, both top 20 teams, both teams that can do some damage. Just two teams that rely on defense. Okay, Texas A&M, we've talked about them. I actually give them credit. They kind of know who they are. They're listen, we can't shoot the ball for crap. And so what we're going to do is just crash the glass, be physical, beat you up, and hope to win games 58-54, okay? Tennessee's kind of the same way, but they win games just the same. Tennessee is not as good offensively as they've been. Worth noting, by the way, Tennessee was they've had the week off. Played Vandy last Saturday, survived, got the week off. They're now going to be refreshed. A&M coming off the loss to Mississippi State, kind of proving that, again, in this league, anybody can beat anyone on any given night. This one has 58-54 written all over it. And I'll say this, too. ESPN, do us all a favor. Don't put Texas A&M games in the noon Eastern window because it screws. Every Texas A&M game has 84 foul shots, and it screws up the window for the rest of the day. Last week, they played Arkansas. The first half wasn't even done after an hour. Then the next game gets pushed back. Then the next game gets pushed back. As I said last week, I was it was Arizona-Houston after Texas A&M Arkansas. I said, Arizona-Houston fans, get ready to learn ESPN news, buddy, because that's where your game is going to end up. Don't put Texas A&M in this time slot. Put them at 9 o'clock at night. When if the game goes long, it's okay because nothing else is on. It's going to screw up the schedule. That's my big, bold prediction for this game. I believe that the game won't actually be over until at least 2:20 Eastern, and it's going to screw up the game behind it. But hey, another conversation for another day. Last Saturday game that I do want to talk about. I'm excited about this one. Why am I excited? I'm coming off the high of being at BYU, Kansas on, what was it, Tuesday night. Great game, incredible atmosphere. Thank you again to the folks of Provo. Thank you to BYU basketball for making me feel special and important and fun. Your boy ate a cougar tail on live TV. It was amazing. That is a snack, by the way. If you missed it on last episode, you can go back and check it out. But what I would also say, besides the fact that I attended the funeral for Kansas basketball, which is officially dead, BYU's playing really good right now. And we talked about it on Tuesday night. The bottom line with BYU, Kevin Young came from the NBA. And in my opinion, listen, I think like a lot of people that come from the NBA, he wanted to recruit the best players, wanted to, show whatever. And I think what a lot of these guys that come from the NBA realize is that in college basketball, older players win you games. I remember Juwan Howard when he came from the NBA, recruited, remember Josh Christopher, recruited Isaiah Todd, recruited all these five-star kids. And then when he was actually playing well, Hunter Dickinson, by the way, he recruited. When he was playing well, it was with the older guys that John Beilein left over. It was Franz Wagner. It was, remember, Chaundi Brown who transferred in. It was Isaiah Livers. So Kevin Young, I think over the last probably month has really realized, like, I got to rock with these older guys. They might not be NBA players, but I believe in them and what they can do for us. We talked about all the big names. Richie Saunders has been awesome. Mawit Mag is a transfer from Rutgers who's now hitting threes, by the way, but he's a defense energy guy. I think BYU's playing as good a basketball as they have played all year. The Kansas game, I think, opened up some eyes nationally, but this is a team that has won 7 of their last 9 games. And oh, by the way, not only have they won 7 of their last 9 games, they kind of need to win them because the tournament resume still is not great. One of the losses over that 9-game stretch was to Arizona at home. Now, I watched that game. I'll give credit to Arizona. It was a back and forth game. And then Arizona's dudes just started making plays, okay? Caleb Love was phenomenal in that game. Carter Bryant was great in that game. I can't remember everybody who was great. Maybe Jaden Bradley made a few plays. But that was a game that was like, 70-70, and then Arizona went on like a 16-4 run to end the game or something. So I just bring it up because it was back and forth. And as far as this game is concerned, I'm actually going to call for the upset, okay? I'm actually going to predict BYU goes on the road and gets the win at McHale. Now, I've been to McHale, just like I've been to Marriott Center, an incredible place to watch a game. The crowd is going to be great. But I think BYU is desperate. They're hungry, and I think they're better than people think. And from the Arizona side of things, they just beat Baylor on the road. So everybody's patting them on the back. Arizona's really good, by the way, but they're getting patted on the back. Everyone's telling them how great they are, blah, 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 this and that. And then on top of that, they also, they still got some tough games ahead. They still have Kansas on the road. They still have Iowa State, I believe, maybe Texas Tech. They got another big game anyway. The point I'm trying to make, I think BYU goes to Arizona. I think BYU gets the upset in this game. Finally, last game, Sunday, world's most famous arena. The UConn Huskies, 2-time defending champ, travel to Madison Square Garden. They like to call it Store South in Connecticut to face the St. John's Red Storm. High noon at the Garden. Don't have a point spread yet, but I'm going to say this. I think Rick Pitino and St. John's roll them. I really do. Listen, with UConn, first off, credit to them. I mean, they lost to they beat Villanova on Tuesday night. They were down 14 points with 11 minutes to go in that game. And on the one hand, you can look at it as a great comeback, down 14 with 11 minutes to go. The counter to that, you were down 14 to Villanova after you took maybe the worst loss that any power conference team has taken all year, at least big-time team. They lost to Seton Hall last Saturday. That is an embarrassing loss. You want their best effort. Instead, you come out and easily could have lost to Villanova. Now, you have to give UConn credit for rallying, but I'm just going to say this as a UConn guy. I'm just here to tell you the truth, okay? Listen, I watch all these games, and UConn has played their best when people kind of doubt them. They were great at Marquette. They were great at Creighton, although that was more Liam McNeely going for 38 rather than them, figuring something out. I just think this is who UConn is right now. I think there's too many spots on this roster that aren't good enough. Hassan Diarra I love, but he's banged up at the point guard spot, so that hurts him. Alex Karaban has not been playing well enough. The bench, some days Jalen Stewart's good, some days he's not. Some days Aiden Mahaney's good, some days he's not. Well, I'm just here to tell you, I don't think there's some miracle run coming. We talked about it with the Chiefs. People would, don't bet against the Chiefs. I'm like, well, I will, because the Eagles are just freaking better than them. And with UConn, I'd love to tell you there's going to be some miracle turnaround. I just think this is who they are this year. St. John's knows who they are. I know they're dealing with some injuries. RJ Luis is banged up, but I would expect him to play. And I just think that St. John's knows who they are. It isn't always pretty, but it is fun. And there's nothing more fun than winning. St. John's, of course, has the 2-game lead in the Big East standings after beating Creighton the other night. How about this? 23-4, 14-2 in the Big East. That is incredible for St. John's. St. John's gets the win. By the way, how about this? Did you see the Rick Pitino commentary from the Vice series? I just bring it up because we did a reel on this. Producer Matt, I don't know if you've seen this. The Rick Pitino reel on Instagram has gone insanely viral. 18,000 views. I think it's at 300 shares right now. I guess everybody's feeling some Big Rick energy right now. UConn, I don't think, can beat St. John's in Madison Square Garden. And get your Big Rick energy tea. All right, I think that's about it for this episode of the Aaron Torres Pod. Let's see if we got any quick questions in the comments before we get out of here. You know what? We'll do something really quick. Let's see here. First of all, PNB Posse, who's a Kentucky fan. Producer Matt, clip this off. I want to send this to my BYU people. Screenshot is fine. Kevin Young, who's the BYU coach, is awesome. He'll be in a Final Four soon. That is from PNB Posse, who is a Kentucky fan. So BYU, people are starting to realize, I think they are going to be really good. And I think it's going to be awesome. By the way, people are talking about their first trip to Rupp Arena. Nobody was there to see the Harlem Globetrotters, all that. All right, I'll tell you what. There were some good questions, but we'll save them for the next episode. If you are not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod, this is what I need you to do. I need you to subscribe. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you listen to podcasts, please make sure to subscribe. Make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Truly appreciate the support on today's show. It was a show where there wasn't a ton of meat on the bone, but we made it work, and I cannot do this show without the support of this show. So thank you to everybody who tuned in, left comments, things like that. Time for me to go. Time for me to get out of here. That is it. By the way, nobody probably asked a very good question that I probably should have addressed off the top. Torres, does expansion mean more play-in games? Yes, that's exactly what it means. So if we went to 76 teams in the NCAA tournament, we would take those 4 play-in games on Tuesday and Wednesday. There would now be 8 play-in games. I don't love it, but if you missed it, go back and check it out. Time for me to go. Appreciate some support. Appreciate the support, I should say. By the way, Sunday's show will not be in the morning. We're going to have to react to UConn and St. John's, so we're probably looking at a 5 or 6 p.m. Eastern time start, but really do appreciate everybody's support. Time for me to go. Time for me to get out of here, and we will talk soon. Shout out to Torrin Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Redick. You have had unblock me, bro. I'll be back Sunday night. New episode of the Aaron Torres Pod. Hope everybody has a great weekend. And to steal a line